lovely people. So now moving on to how I came to college for the US. After I came back, after my exchange year, I started to go back to school in Germany. I was back with my friends and family, but it took me a long time to adjust back to life in Germany after my exchange year. I just had really enjoyed living over here and just enjoyed the connections I made in the end. And it was just, I also just really missed studying in English and using English like all the time, because I really started to love speaking English, writing English while I was in the US. That led me to think or start to have a thought that I might want to go back to the US for college. I let that thought marinate, and then I brought it up to my parents. Since you probably most of you know, studying in the US, if you don't have scholarships or financial aid, is very expensive, and it can often be more expensive for international students because you often have to pay like out of state tuition, or you have to pay sometimes even international tuition depending on the institution you're thinking about going to. So it is not a cheap endeavor, and again, I'm extremely grateful that my parents were able to give me that opportunity, and I know that I'm very privileged to have had that opportunity. So, back to the conversation with my parents, I brought it up to them, and my mom seemed like super on board, like right from the beginning. She was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. You already were there, people there, it's great. My dad, he was not super thrilled like when I first told him, because I think he was just nervous. I'm his youngest child, that things were gonna happen to me, and that it's college and it's just a big change, and it would be so many years that I would be abroad. But he was very quickly on board after he got over the initial shock of me wanting to leave again. So we're all good. Alrighty, so after the initial talk, we had to figure out, if they would be able to give me that opportunity. So we had to look at cost and that kind of thing. So there were a lot of conversations that went into the final decision of my parents were like, yes, we can make this work, we can give you this opportunity. And so once we figured that out, I started, figuring out where I wanted to go to college. And I decided that I wanted to go to UW Eau Claire, which is the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, because that's in Wisconsin, as the name says. And I, was, in the area of where I knew people, and I also thought, oh, I was gonna know some people who were gonna go to that college. So, I just thought it was a good choice because of that. And because I also had been on the campus before when I was an exchange student, and it was very nice, very clean, pretty, and I thought that is probably the school that I want to apply to. So I did the entire application and moving abroad logistics situation myself. I did not go with an organization or anything when I was an exchange student. So I talked to Eau Claire, I figured out with their international student office how to apply and what the process was like. Just asked them for help when I didn't know anything, but also did just research on my own. And so I got all of the stuff that I had to do together. One of the things that I had to do that I want to point out right now, if you're thinking about going abroad, is I had to take a TOEFL, or in German we say TOEFL test, which is a test to test your English. And I did that one in 2017, and I got a pretty good score. And I had studied for it a lot, so I'm glad that it paid off. But that's one thing to be aware of. You'll probably, if you want to study abroad, have to submit, at least for college, have to submit some sort of test of your English, at least for the US. I don't know if they do that in the UK, Australia, or wherever you might want to go as well, if they ask for language tests. But that's maybe something to think about. You might have to do a language test wherever you want to go. And I needed the test to apply, so I applied to UW Eau Claire in the fall of 2017. I got in, then I did get all the paperwork I needed from them to get my visa. I'm currently on an F1 visa, and that's the visa, I had to get with all the paperwork I got from them. I hope that makes sense. So the visa process itself is a whole beast, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube talking about it. I can talk about my experience with it, but I feel it's been quite a few years since then, because I applied for my visa in 2018. So I don't know, I would have to check how relevant my experience still is, because I know that I think a few things have changed since I applied to it. but I, you know, got all the paperwork for that and then went to the US Embassy in Berlin in the February of 2018. But the thing is, when I went there, they told me that I could not get my visa like into my passport, like they printed into it, until the spring. So I had to send the embassy my passport in the mail, and then they would send it back to me. And you know, it got there fine. I had like tracking and everything for it. And when they sent it back to me, I got a notification that it was like delivered into my family's mailbox, and then it wasn't there. And then for an entire day, I thought that my passport might have been lost. And that would have been not great, totally not a vibe, and I was really freaking out. And then it thankfully like showed up in the mailbox a day later for some reason, so that was just a mishap. That was not great. So, you know, once I got my visa in the spring, I also graduated from high school in 2018. It was in June. I actually noted the exact month here. And then I ended up moving to the US a month later in July of 2018. And there I started to then live with my then boyfriend, now husband. And I started college in September of 2018. And my first year of college was rough. Like, it was nothing like I had experienced during my exchange year. Like, school, first of all, was very overwhelming for me because it was a lot harder than, I don't know if I thought it was going to be. I mean, I knew college was going to be hard, but studying in English at that level full time was very difficult. It was way different from high school. And then second, I also felt very isolated and lonely, because school took a lot of my time because I had to like study a lot to keep up with, like, you know, my peers. And then I also had a hard time meeting people because of that, because I was studying a lot. I also at the time had a job, like a part-time job, and I just didn't have a lot of time, so I just didn't have time really to like meet people, and it was just difficult. But overall, I also just felt like nobody really wanted to meet me and become my friend. Like, I tried to like put myself out there and like ask classmates if they like wanted to hang out, and they would usually say yeah, but never get back to me. So that was very difficult. It's probably because I didn't live in the dorms but with my husband. But I do not regret, kind of like, I regret not living in the dorms because I think it would have been easier to make friends, but I also think it was a better move because it was a lot cheaper to not live in the dorms. And fun fact, your school, if you want to go to the US for like college, they might make you live in the dorms. But Eau Claire had like way too many people and not enough dorms, so they asked me if I like did not want to go into the dorms my first year, so I didn't. But it was definitely isolating and difficult for me, and you know, because of that, I felt very, very unhappy. Like, I was not happy. I will be very transparent here. Like, I was extremely grateful to be there and like go to college, and I really enjoyed learning what I was learning. I got a bachelor's in biology, by the way. But it just like the whole like social aspect and just being very overwhelmed with school just made me feel not happy. And it was a very difficult time for me. So then when my husband one day approached me, he was like, hey, like, I'm graduating in the spring of 2019 and I can't get a master's here. I have to go somewhere else, and I really want to get a master's. Like, you can stay here if you want. Like, if you want to stay at Eau Claire and like don't want to move, like, that's up to you. But you could also like transfer, you know, to wherever I'm going. And I decided to take the leap and transfer because I just wasn't very happy at Eau Claire, unfortunately. So yeah, that's how I ended up at the University of South Florida, where I got my bachelor's from. So I applied to them. Again, it was a very similar process to my first application process to university. It was just a little bit different because I was a transfer. They actually made me take the ACT. If you are an American and watching this, you probably know what this is. If you're not, it's a test they make high school students take in the US to like test if they're ready for college. I don't know why they made me take it, but they did, and I didn't do great. I don't remember what my score was, but like it was enough to get into the school, but it was like on the lower end. So yeah, I, you know, once again, preparing for transfer, got all my stuff together for the application first. It was a little more difficult, I feel like, because transferring is like not as easy as one would think. You're like, oh, I just go from one university to the next. If you're an international student, it doesn't work like that because you have to then transfer your visa record and all of that stuff. So it was quite a bit of work, but I applied and I ended up getting in. So I got into USF, and then we moved there after my freshman year, so to Florida. And then at USF, I had a great time because I made some really great friends. I loved my professors, and I just genuinely enjoyed my time in school there. I mean, I could go more into this, but I just genuinely had such a great experience at USF, and I mean, I just met my best friend there, and it's just been really good, and I'm really glad that I took the leap to transfer from Eau Claire to USF because I had a much better time there. And the only thing is that me and my husband both were not loving living in Florida, like the state. We were just not quite vibing with it, which is funny because you would think it's great because there's beaches and it's always warm. Like, I mean, winters were great because winters in Wisconsin are really cold, and in Florida there is basically no winter, so that was nice. But yeah, it was definitely something. So when, you know, the end of my degree came up in 2021, there came the question, am I gonna go back to Germany after my bachelor's, or am I gonna get my master's degree that I wanted to get in the US? I obviously ended up getting my master's degree in the US as well, but I definitely for quite a while thought, especially during COVID, and I had severe homesickness during COVID because I obviously couldn't go home to my family and visit them and all that kind of thing. I was like, I definitely want to go to Germany for grad school. Like, I don't want to stay in the US. I'm not really loving living in Florida. I think I'm ready to go home. But once I started to look into getting my master's degree in Germany, I found out that they couldn't assure me, the university I was looking at, that they could take my bachelor's degree because bachelor's degrees in the US differ quite a bit in the sense, from German ones, in the sense that they're a year longer and it's just a little different. So they couldn't assure me that I could, you know, get my degree accredited in Germany and then go to, you know, graduate school. So for me, that was very difficult because I always knew that I wanted to go to graduate school because, you know, I got my bachelor's in biology, but I wanted to get a different degree to work in like sustainability or like environmental conservation or something along those lines. And so I was like, I need a graduate degree for that. So what am I going to do? As you can see, I decided to then apply to graduate school in the US. And I looked at a lot of different programs and I looked into a lot of different areas, and I ended up finding a program in Wisconsin that I really, really wanted to go to, and I ended up applying to it. You know, again, application process was actually not that bad because I, you know, was getting my bachelor's here in the US, so it was a lot easier to like transfer into graduate school as if I had gotten like a bachelor's in Germany. So it wasn't that bad, but it took me like all summer of 2021 to like get my application ready, and I will probably make a video on all of that process at some point because it wasn't bad, but it was just a lot, you know, like a lot of writing and doing of things. So I ended up applying to the program. And here's the big disclaimer. I only applied to one program, and that is not something you should do if you're thinking about wanting to go to grad school, because that was a very like bold move of myself. Like, I should have not done that. I should have applied to multiple schools, because like what would I would have done if I like only applied to one and didn't get in? So my biggest tip, apply to more than one graduate school, okay? Like, I still don't know how I was like, yeah, this is the one I'm gonna apply to, and if I don't get in, I will figure it out from there, you know? Okay, so I ended up getting in, so we did another cross-country move, like my husband and I. He was coming with, by the way, because he, you know, was also not really loving living in Florida. So we moved from Florida back to Wisconsin, and we, you know, fell in love with the place that we ended up, you know, living in, so the place that I go to school. And we decided, we were not deciding right away, but we were thinking about, is this a place we want to settle down, you know, permanently? So, you know, after many talks and such, we were like, yeah, this might be the place. And my husband ended up proposing and we got married last year, and then started the process of applying for a green card. So that's what I'm currently waiting on. You know, I'm just chilling. I'm still in Wisconsin, finishing up my master's degree in December. And I never thought, to be honest, that I would stay, like think about ever staying permanently in the US, just because I love my hometown. Like I love Hamburg, I love my family, my friends, and my siblings and everything I have over there. But just my husband and I both really fell in love with the place that we live now, and we're like, we could make this our home, you know. So just overall, my entire journey of like going abroad, it had a lot of ups, it had a lot of downs, but I would say that it has definitely made me the person I am today, and it made me a person that I'm proud to be. So I overall really think going abroad for some time is really awesome if you're able to. But yeah, so that was my story. And for, I hope you stick around for other videos on like more detailed things and tips that I have for going abroad. But I thought we should maybe start it out with where I started and where I'm now, and we can move on from there. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.